Good Thursday morning. What a day and night in New York baseball. Things we never expected to see going into the day, or actually going into the season. When you imagine how a season is going to go, you know there's going to be days and nights with your team that you did not expect. Well, yesterday was one of those days for the Met fan watching their owner have to address a disaster of a season with his team basically out of it before the end of June. And then Domingo Germán for the New York Yankees later on at night with lots of us asleep. I was one of them. Of course, all the crap baseball that I have watched this year. Terrible games, terrible offense, terrible pitching. The Yankees have been a little better than the Mets, but still, they've been disappointing. And then when Domingo Germán pitches a perfect game, I don't even see it. I don't even see it live. That sucks. But it's great for him. It's great for the Yankees. It is history. I'm not taking anything away from him because it was against his terrible A's team. That's what happens, and he dominated. Very, very cool watching the highlights. But being able to watch something like that live, of course, just is great because it really does not happen. Only 24 in the history of baseball, now the fourth in Yankees history. So a crazy day. Yankee fans can celebrate. Mets fans can hold their head in their hands once again. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing great, G, and I fell asleep after the fifth inning. I think they were up 6-0 or 7-0 or whatever it was, and it was just like one of those. Oh, by the way, in the middle of the summer games against a crappy team,
Of course, yeah.
And Rizzo makes a nice play, and then of course he goes 3-1 on his last batter. I saw this morning, and threw 3 straight curveballs.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, that's pretty gutsy to be able to do that, and he did it, and he is now a part of history, which is amazing, considering what he had done his previous 2 outings. That's the amazing thing about all of this, is that a guy can come into a game knowing that, his previous 2 outings, you got to scratch your head and say, okay, is he into it? What's going on? He certainly has it. You see it every now and again. Kind of like Luis Severino. He has it too. It's in there.
Sure.
The question is when can they truly be consistent? And maybe this will give this young man some major confidence going forth for the rest of the season. But, great for him, man. Like you said, 24th all-time perfect game in baseball. It was a quick game. The other thing about this particular game is that guess who woke up? Giancarlo Stanton woke up and hit a bomb last night, and Bader got a couple hits. Everybody got a couple hits except, I think, for Torres and Rizzo. So this is exactly, if you're a Yankee fan, you get a young pitcher, well, not so much young, but Domingo Germán, who's had some history here, some of it bad, who pitches a perfect game, and you get some offense, and you win 11-0. So that's perfect. Now, as for the Mets, you know what I thought yesterday was? Yesterday was it was a bullhorn press conference, in a sense that Steve Cohen was sending a message to one David Stearns. So David Stearns' contract with the Milwaukee Brewers will end at the end of this season. David Stearns, obviously everybody knows, was the president and general manager of baseball operations of the Milwaukee Brewers. He had a 5-year run there that was probably the best run in Brewer history. And he's 38 years old. He's from Manhattan. And the one thing that was really interesting, other than just absolutely throwing the Willpons under the bus, was just so... it's just so distasteful to me anyway. He basically said that, he's got to wait for his guy. And he knows who his guy is. And his guy most likely is going to be David Stearns.
Yeah, it's either David Stearns or Theo Epstein. Those are the 2 guys that have been mentioned time and time again. I saw that same reaction about throwing the Willpons under the bus. I didn't think it was that bad. I think that he mentioned, he's like, there's teams that have had pitching labs for a number of years. We just opened ours last year. When I got here, we didn't have a lot of pitching depth in the organization. It takes time to build it up. I think all those things are true. Did he have to say, when I got here, things stunk? No, he didn't have to, but those things are true. But the press conference, to me, I don't know, it took this turn into this president of baseball operations thing where that's all anybody could focus on. Every question became about that. He talked about it over and over again as if that was the thing that was going to cure everything in the Mets organization, was that particular thing. And also, one question and answer I didn't really get was, okay, I understand how you're trying to build sustained success in this organization, but you have gone all in to try to win now. Don't you realize that? Like, you're sitting up there going, well, we got to do this and invest here and invest there, and it takes time and it takes time. You've been impatient with that taking time. You've decided to go in on this team with this amount of money to win right now, and you said 3 to 5 years, which you don't want to talk about anymore when Bruce Beck brought that up. But really, none of that was addressed. It was all talking about how you build for the future and blah, blah, blah. I mean, what? You didn't have the patience to build for the future. Don't tell us to have the patience to build for the future. You weren't waiting on anything. You went out and you got guys who were 40 years old, 41 years old, or 39 years old and paid them $43 million a year because you didn't want to wait and you wanted to win now. So I just thought that was a little bit surprising. And also the fact that he goes, well, normally I have these press conferences, a little informal thing in the dugout, and then, I ended up tweeting out what I tweeted out, and this became a much bigger thing. Well, what did you think was going to happen,
What I
Steve?
don't understand is why SNY didn't have it on.
They didn't?
No, they had Evan sitting there watching and listening, and so I was watching his face.
I watched it later.
Craig wasn't in the studio until he came back in, and he started shoving food in his face.
Yeah.
So that's what I was watching on SNY. I wanted to see Steve Cohen, but those guys talked about it just like we're talking about it this morning. And Evan does a great job of covering the Mets and understanding the Mets and everything else. I mean, he also said that every option is open except for the option of firing anybody. I'm not firing anybody, which is fine. I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. He did say that if there are opportunities where I've already spent the money and we have to trade somebody or somebody like that, everything's going to be on the table depending on how things play out, and things are, and it is getting late according to him. But I still think yesterday, really, what this whole thing was about was legitimately about David Stearns. That's what I believe. I believe this was like, this guy's contract is up at the end of 2023. He's 38 years old. He's from Manhattan. He went to Harvard. He's been throughout baseball. He actually started with the Mets in their Arizona Fall League, I think. So he's been very familiar with the Mets. He knows what's going on. That's the target. I believe that the Milwaukee owner is probably not one of those owners that is all that much into Steve Cohen, if you know what I mean. Probably not very happy about the spending and everything else. And I do believe that yesterday, if David Stearns is here with this team, which I believe he probably is because he's from here, he heard loud and clear across the bow that, this job is open for somebody to come here and take it. How about the other thing he did say? That I couldn't believe how hard it was to get somebody to come to New York and come here and work, like for the Mets. He basically was, again, shooting down the opportunity, or not shooting down the opportunity, but basically taking another shot at the Willpon, saying that this was a terrible place to work. Nobody wanted to come and work here.
No. I did not take it that way.
I did.
No. Why? Because the Willpons weren't there anymore. So why would it matter if they took the job if the Willpons were gone? It was new ownership. The way I took that was, all right, now you got a big bad owner coming in who could be impetuous and could not want to mess around. You don't know anything about him. All you know is that he's this crazy hedge fund guy that was in the shadows and bought a bunch of art. So I need to see what type of guy this is before I take that job. And oh, by the way, being the general manager for the New York Mets it seems like something that's going to age you. I mean, if I have a nice, comfortable job and I'm okay with where I'm at, I'll wait for a different opportunity as opposed to going over there. Let me see how the Steve Cohen regime is. I mean, I don't know. I did not think that he sat up there and basically said that the reason that they were in this situation was because of the Willpons. I think some of the things
it was hard to hire people to come and take this job.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with the Willpons because they were gone already.
Which you couldn't believe.
Okay, but what does that have to do with the Willpons? They were gone.
Well,
I mean, it's one thing if the Willpons were still the owner and he said no one would come here with the previous ownership to work. He said when he was the owner, it was tough for people to come here, find people to work. Well, there's no connection to the Willpons in that statement.
Well, I mean, the Willpons were the previous owners,
but they were gone. So what does it matter?
I'm not going to argue with you.
Well, because you don't have a point. You can't. You can't.
Wow.
No, but seriously, you keep saying the same thing. It doesn't make any sense. He didn't go after the Willpons. Here's the thing. The Willpons were horrendous owners. They were terrible. And there's no hiding from that. And he could have torched them and did not yesterday.
We don't have a pitching lab. We don't have this. The farm
Those
is
are
nothing.
facts.
We weren't, developing pitchers. So now,
were they wrong about it?
I don't know.
Was he wrong about it?
Let me see. Was Wheeler a pitcher that they developed? Was Jacob deGrom a pitcher?
And
what
happened with
They
Wheeler?
got hurt, or they let him go.
Who let him go?
Well, the Willpons.
Oh, okay. So that's part of it too.
Yeah. Well,
okay. What are you talking about?
To me, he took shots at the Willpons. He took shots, and same thing for Evan. Evan felt the same way.
So what if what Evan feels? That doesn't mean he's right.
I'm just saying we both felt that way. I'm not saying that you're right either.
But
I mean, you obviously think you're right, but I don't think you're right. I think I heard what I heard, you heard what you heard, and I know what it is. It's a job description perfectly for David Stearns. That's what that was yesterday.
Explain
we need
to me
a
how
baseball operations director that's going to reformulate what we're doing. We're trying to build a quality organization. And you're right. He did spend money to try to win this year. And you know what? You're also right about, the players not living up to their contracts, which he never really got into, although he did say that, this is on the players. I'm not firing the manager and I'm not firing the GM. So he took shots at the Willpons, and he also took shots at the players. Yes, and by
the way, this is something I can't let go, because him saying that it was hard for someone to come here and take this job, and that someone saying that you and Evan saying that that's a shot at the Willpons when the Willpons were gone doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. It's new ownership. They got all the resources in the world. Steve Cohen has basically said that in order to get good people in here, you have to be patient, which is something that's total. There is no reason why anybody wouldn't take the job because the Willpons were there and then gone, and Steve Cohen was in and say, I can't go work for that guy because the Willpons were there before he got there. That doesn't make any sense.
The Mets have a reputation, and basically is what he's alluding to. And, Sandy Alderson came here. Why? Because Major League Baseball made him come here to take a job. And then he also said, I was lucky enough because Billy Epro fell on my lap because he was fired from the Angels.
Why did Major League Baseball appoint Sandy Alderson at that point?
Because of the ownership and because of the
Willpons did such a terrible job. So we can sit here and say it, but if Steve Cohen goes up there and say the facts, then all of a sudden we criticize him for it? I don't understand.
Well,
these are facts.
Well, really the bottom line is you started out right. You said you are all in this year. You spent money for this year. And instead of talking about really this year, he was talking about he needed a president of baseball operations and a CEO person. That was going to be his number one priority.
Started asking questions about that over and over and over again.
So that's why I'm telling you, to me, it was basically we're going to hire David Stearns. That's what I think. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know when his contract is over. I guess it will be over when the season's over. I don't know if it goes all the way through December and then January 1st or in the middle of January we're going to get, a New Year's Day present or whatever, and it's going to be that he's going to come in and run the team. I think that there was, for a guy who's not used to talking publicly, you got a guy that's kind of like contradicting himself a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to argue over whether or not he's thrown trash into Willpons. I believe he did in certain ways. I do believe that. And I also believe that Evan believes that. And to me, that's not the issue right now. The issue right now is your team, the amount of money you're spending on this team, and why this team is played so lackadaisical. That's the question that should have been answered. And he did say, it's really on the players. I'm not firing the manager, and I'm not firing the general manager.
Now, listen, I saw it a different way. I think if he really wanted to trash the Willpons, he really could have. But this is what I can't figure out. Evan and all the other Met fans out there, if we want to keep going back to Evan's opinion on this, fine. But every Met fan wanted the Willpons out over and over and over again. Couldn't stand it. We were throwing parties when Steve Cohen became the owner because of what the Willpons did to the organization. The Madoff situation became a joke, couldn't spend any money, bargain basement, Scott Boras said all this stuff. I mean, we were throwing parties with the thought of Steve Cohen becoming the owner, and then he did, and then he sits up there and details some of the insufficiencies of the organization, which are facts, and all of a sudden now that's a problem? Didn't we all agree with that?
But the point being is that yesterday should have been about this team this year, and part of it was Part of it wasn't. Part of it was revisionist history, if you want to say it that way, or just history in general. I mean, the Willpons did get the team to the World Series in 2015. They did have Matt Harvey on the team. They did have Wheeler on the team. They did have DeGrom on the team. They were bringing young players up. They were developing pitchers, but now in the last 5 or 6 years, that has not been the case. I mean, I understand all that, but this is not about. To me, it shouldn't be about, we have a pitching lab finally, we're getting our organization, in the right place finally, and we need a CEO, president of operations, David Stearns, you're going to be here. So, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it should have been about this team and what is going on with this team, and how do you feel about spending that kind of money on players that are not living up to their contracts.
That's more the fault of the questions that were being asked, because the people that were sitting there answering or asking these questions were hung up on this baseball operations guy. I mean, they kept asking the questions about it. There was just a few in there about this team and the money and the regret and that stuff. That's what I thought this was going to be about. I mean, but the second that he said, I want to hire a president of baseball operations, every single question was about that. And even Andy Martinez said, you're looking for a regular president and the president of baseball operations? And what type of person are you looking for? And what type of this? And one person said, are you looking for somebody with experience? What? I mean, this is the problem. I mean, we're sitting here criticizing what he's saying. He's just answering the stupid questions. I mean, really. I mean, what I saw yesterday, there was nothing that he was going to say this is another thing that drove me nuts about this yesterday. Every single person going into this thing said there's nothing that Steve Cohen's going to say that's going to make a difference. But because everybody is pissed off about the Mets, once he started talking, then everybody had a problem with what he said. There was nothing he could say, good or bad, that was going to make a difference in how a Met fan felt about this season or the future. And quite frankly, he was telling the truth, which is it's on the players. It takes time to build up an organization. Nobody expected this to happen. And I'm not someone who's going to be impetuous and start firing everybody. And I can't pitch and I can't hit, which is really basically the truth. All of that is the truth. And the problem is that the truth doesn't really fall to the Met fan in a way that's acceptable, because we're all sickened by the fact that the team stinks. But that is the truth. It's been a massive failure, and the organization is still building itself up. And you have to, if you want to trust him and his hires, you can. And if you don't, you can't. But really, the fact are that the Mets are in a bad place in the organization. And hopefully some of these changes and these investments that he's making that aren't in guys like Max Scherzer, Francisco Lindor, and Justin Verlander are paying off behind the scenes. The stuff that he said the fans don't see, which is one thing I actually did not like. Like, then show us. I mean, why are you hiding the good stuff from us?
Well, because the good stuff is the minutia of the organization, which is fine, and a big part of that organization is somebody who's going to be running it like a David Stearns. That's why I think yesterday was, hey, the job is open. We need a guy. We know who that guy. And I think the Theo Epstein thing, I don't necessarily know that's a real thing, but I would think that the David Stearns things is. The other thing, he did say that he would eat money because he felt like the money has been already spent. Like, I've already spent money, I've already lost money, and if I have to make a move, and we'll make a move, and it makes sense for us to bolster our farm system, use the word farm system, by the way, I would do that. So I think from a Mets fan perspective, when you hear an owner say that he would spend money in that regard, I think that probably makes you feel pretty good, as opposed to, basically saying these guys are staying here no matter what, because you know what, I'm paying them to play here. So he did say that.
I basically think that yesterday was the last time that they're going to be relevant until the trade deadline. I think that that's the last time that they're going to be worthy of any discussion, because I don't think they're going to go on any sort of winning streak. I think that from now until the trade deadline, they're going to be a dead non-issue. The only reason they jumped back into the news yesterday was because of the Steve Cohen press conference. And now they're going to fade into oblivion as we go into the summer and into July 4th, and people start doing things that are fun other than watching Mets baseball. And then when the trade deadline comes around and they have to start selling pieces off, then they'll become a story again, just to go and bury their heads in the sand as we focus to football. So yesterday, to me, was it for them for the season as far as being relevant. Maybe a couple of pieces here or there. where a trade deadline and then at the end of the season, if they have to fire somebody because things went really, really bad, but it's over. They are now going right into oblivion for the rest of the year.
Which, by the way, he did kind of say that, we will look at everything at the end of the season and decisions will be made by then. And if it is David Stearns that comes in here, you take a look at his history. When he took over in Milwaukee, the first thing he did is start firing people. That's the first thing he did, and that's usually the first thing that a CEO / president would normally do, come in and bring in their people, because It's impossible sometimes to work with people that have been in a spot. I don't care if it's 2 years or 20 years. Sometimes people are set in their ways, and they do not want to bend. They do not want to take directions from somebody new, and that's why when somebody new comes in, it's see ya.
See ya! Like Al Dukes today, who is sick, and he is called out sick. He's got a sore throat. He's got a headache. He's got, what else did he say? Pounding headache, sore throat, fever. So he is out, and we're wishing thoughts and prayers to Bradley Beach.
Thoughts and prayers.
And Al Dukes.
So we know if he's got the COVID.
Does anybody know if they have COVID anymore? Did they even test for it? Does anybody talk about it? I haven't heard anybody have COVID in the last several months, so potentially. I mean, he was flying around the country. He was on a plane. You could pick up anything.
He's in Indianapolis, that's for sure.
Yes, that is true. All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network. Got some weather for you right now. Brought to you by New Balance Long Island. New Balance Long Island stores specialize in personalized one-on-one service. They find your fit. You find your style. Located at 127 Old Country Road in Carl Place and 115 Alexander Avenue in Lake Grove. New Balance Long Island, nationally known, locally owned, high of 82 today. Chance of rain, very small. It's going to be a beautiful day out there. Air quality will be affected, apparently, again, from the Canadian wildfires. By the way, all the Domingo Herman perfect game sound coming up next with Jerry Recco's Update.